That was the narrative. Too young, too inexperienced, just another defensive coordinator getting thrown in the deep end, replacing a legend, stepping into a division with Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. On February 8th, 2026 in Levi Stadium, those doubts didn't just age poorly, they got buried. From the opening kickoff, the Seahawks looked prepared, disciplined, and ruthless. Every adjustment hit, every mismatch was hunted, every Patriots weakness was exposed. By the end of the night, the Lombardi Trophy belonged to Seattle, and the league had a new defensive mastermind. This wasn't luck, it wasn't momentum, and it definitely wasn't inexperience. This was the night Mike Macdonald proved he wasn't in over his head. He was ahead of everyone, and this is how he silenced every single critic who said he couldn't do it. Mike Macdonald's football story began at Centennial High School in Roswell, Georgia in the mid-2000s. On the football field, he was a hard-working, hard-hitting linebacker for the Centennial Knights, constantly suffering injuries as a result of his aggressive playing style. In the build-up to his final high school football game, Macdonald tore his ACL during practice, ending his playing career on a sour note before enrolling at the University of Georgia to study finance. For many in his situation, the opportunity to study at one of the country's top schools and enter a potentially lucrative career would have been a dream situation, but not Mike Macdonald. During his time at school, he worked part-time as a linebackers and running backs coach at Cedar Shoals High School in Athens, just 4 miles away from campus. Macdonald had decided at this early stage that football was his true calling in life, and that a career in business didn't interest him nearly as much. The fact that he dedicated his time to coaching freshman high school football over well-paid financial consulting internships underlined that. In 2014, he got his first big break, with John Harbaugh hiring him as an intern for his Baltimore Ravens staff for the upcoming season. Macdonald had initially interviewed with the Ravens for a scouting internship, but he clearly impressed enough in the interview for the Ravens to keep his name on file. As a result, he was hired for a 1-year internship, and his NFL journey began. During his spell in Baltimore, Macdonald worked his way all the way up through the ranks from coaching intern to linebackers coach. This defense was ranked in the top 3 in scoring in each of his 3 years at that position, as the Ravens compiled a 35-13 record between 2018 and 2020. Macdonald had clearly played his part in this, and many years on, he thanked John Harbaugh for his faith in him.
Well, it's been everything. I mean, he's the one that took a bet on me to begin with, and he's invested in me really throughout the stage of my career and saw something, I guess, that he saw a vision for my career. He's definitely a mentor of mine, and I look up to him. I mean, he's a phenomenal coach, future Hall of Famer. I love him to death.
However, at the end of that 2020 season, he was offered a new opportunity entirely. On a recommendation from his brother John, Jim Harbaugh offered Macdonald the defensive coordinator job at the University of Michigan, as he worked to restore his alma mater back to their former glory. The job that Macdonald did in his 1 year at Michigan was undeniable, as he turned Division I's 95th best defense into the 8th in the space of 12 months, nearly halving the amount of points per game given up. With Macdonald leading the defense, the team won their first Big Ten championship in 17 years, defeating Iowa 42-3 in the championship game in a commanding, dominating defensive performance. Although the following game saw Michigan fall to Georgia in the college football playoff semifinal, it was clear that Macdonald had done a superb job with the Wolverines, and that he was attracting attention from the NFL, most specifically from the team that he'd already spent several years at. In his absence, the Ravens' defense had dropped off significantly, ranking just 19th in scoring, leading to the firing of defensive coordinator Don "Wink" Martindale. After the team missed the playoffs as a result of a devastating 6-game losing streak to end the season, the team needed a new DC, and Mike Macdonald was the obvious candidate. He returned to Baltimore and straight away began to stamp his authority on the defense, getting the Ravens playing the type of football that the franchise was always known for. Early on in that first season as defensive coordinator, it was clear that the franchise had made a great call in bringing him back, as the team ranked 3rd in points allowed and returned to the playoffs. The following year, the Ravens' defense was even better, ranking as the league's very best and giving up just 16.5 points per game. This was the first Baltimore unit to lead the league in scoring since 2006, back in the days of Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, Ed Reed and company. Whilst this unit had its own stars like Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, and Patrick Queen, Macdonald clearly deserved a substantial amount of the credit for this, as his Ravens defense constantly locked teams down all season. Perhaps the best example of this defense's quality came on Christmas Day 2023, when the Ravens faced San Francisco and broke one of the best offenses in football in half. Going into that game, Brock Purdy was one of the leading candidates for MVP, but he threw 4 picks that night as the defense suffocated the Niners and set up Lamar Jackson and his offense for a comfortable 33-19 victory. The Ravens finished the season 13-4, earning the 1 seed in the conference before suffering a heartbreaking 17-10 loss to Patrick Mahomes' Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship. For Macdonald, this would prove to be his final game with the franchise, as yet again, he'd carried out a fantastic defensive turnaround and turned heads across the league. At the end of the 2023 season, several teams eyed up Macdonald for their head coaching vacancies, impressed by the way his defenses had imposed their will on teams all season. In a league where so many teams were hiring young offensive minds in the mold of Sean McVay, the Seattle Seahawks instead opted to hire the brightest defensive mind, in order to counter McVay's Rams and Kyle Shanahan's 49ers in the NFC West. Some were unconvinced though, having watched the LA Chargers attempt something similar with Brandon Staley, before he was fired during just his 3rd season with the team. As well as he had done as defensive coordinator in Baltimore, there were still obvious questions around whether he'd be able to make the step up to the main job in Seattle.
And the reason I'm a little skeptical of this is because Brandon Staley was a first-time defensive coordinator that had a pretty good defense in Los Angeles with the Rams, who got him hired with the Chargers. Things just went different because when you're a coordinator versus a head coach,
there you go.
You're managing everything, even if you are calling the defense still. You still got to figure out what you want to call on offense because they got to check with you.
Macdonald also had the tough task of filling the shoes of Pete Carroll, a legendary defensive coach and the winningest in Seahawks franchise history. Carroll famously brought the team their first ever Super Bowl title with a crushing 43-8 win over the Broncos in Super Bowl 48. But in recent times, the defense had fallen away, with general manager John Schneider deciding that Macdonald was the man to restore the unit to their past glory. Just as he had in Michigan and Baltimore, Mike Macdonald had a defense to rebuild. And for the 3rd straight team, he passed that test with flying colors. In his first season as head coach, Macdonald turned the Seahawks from the league's 25th best scoring defense into the 11th best, beginning a new era in the Pacific Northwest. The turnaround was achieved partly due to the additions of Leonard Williams and Ernest Jones as a result of trades with the Giants and Titans, as well as the decision to draft Byron Murphy with the 16th overall pick. But more than anything else, Macdonald was starting to stamp his own authority on this team, leading a culture shift that was getting the best out of everyone on the defense. Macdonald's teams are led by 4 core principles: brotherhood, truth, work, and violence. And as the 2024 season went on, it was obvious that he was getting this message across to the team. While Seattle narrowly missed the playoffs in 2024, going 10-7 and losing out on the division title on a tiebreaker, the doubters were certainly a lot quieter going into his 2nd year as head coach. By the end of that season, they'd all shut up entirely. The 2025 Seahawks defense is one of the best we've seen in the league for many, many years, maybe even since the legendary Legion of Boom teams of the early 2010s. Including the playoffs, the team gave up just 17.2 points per game, the best mark in the league, and began real conversations about whether they were on the same level as the legendary unit led by Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Bobby Wagner, and Earl Thomas. Up front, the team sees Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, Uchenna Nwosu, and DeMarcus Lawrence cause havoc, constantly putting pressure on quarterbacks without any need to blitz. At linebacker, Ernest Jones and Drake Thomas form a formidable pairing as the linchpin of the defense, putting up a combined 222 tackles throughout the regular season. And in the secondary, this team is phenomenal as well, with Devin Witherspoon and Reek Woolen locking down receivers on the outside, and first-round draft pick Nicky Manwari having an impressive first campaign at safety alongside Kobe Bryant and Julian Love. This is all to say that there's clearly talent on this defense, with Jones, Witherspoon, and Williams all being named second-team All-Pro this year. But this talent was elevated all year by the coaching of Macdonald and his defensive coordinator, England's Adam Dirty. He has his own remarkable story, by the way, having come from the British American Football League. This was a Seahawks unit playing with aggression and tenacity, and looking exactly like the unit that Macdonald had led in Baltimore. However, as good as this defense clearly is, there were still questions about their ability to topple the league's very best. As we've said, part of the reason that Macdonald was hired was to deal with the Rams and 49ers, and by week 11, they had already lost to both of those teams and were sitting with a 7-3 record in pro football's best division. Some Seahawks fans were still unsure about Macdonald's ability to topple those two teams, with one blogger saying after the Rams loss in week 11, "Still, even after Carroll was basically fired, he remained under contract with the Seahawks through 2024, Seattle zigged instead of zagging by hiring another defensive-minded coach, Mike Macdonald. One of Macdonald's priorities was finding a way to stop the Rams and 49ers offenses. That's still a work in progress. Now, though, that work has been emphatically completed. Following that loss to LA on November 16th, Seattle went on to win their final 7 regular season games. This included an overtime thriller at home to the Rams and a defensive masterclass against the 49ers in Week 18, which saw Kyle Shanahan's men put up just 3 points and 173 total yards at Levi Stadium. This victory clinched the 1 seed for the Seahawks, earning them a first-round bye, before another meeting with San Francisco that went exactly the same way. After Rashid Shaheed's opening punt return touchdown, Seattle never looked like losing, destroying the 49ers 41-6 across 60 minutes of football that showed everyone exactly why they hired Mike Macdonald. The following week, it was the offense's turn to show off. Whilst Macdonald was hired largely to improve the team's defense, he deserves a lot of credit, alongside his general manager, for making the bold decision to replace Geno Smith at quarterback and splash out over $100 million over 3 years on a new signal caller in Sam Darnold. Like Macdonald, Darnold had also faced his own share of doubters throughout his NFL career and was on his 5th team at the age of just 28. Like Macdonald, he silenced all of those doubters this year. His NFC Championship game performance against the Rams was phenomenal, throwing for 346 yards and 3 touchdowns without a single pick, as the Seahawks conquered NFL MVP Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, and the rest of the Rams organization in a thrilling 31-27 victory. In an already legendary post-match interview with Michael Strahan, Macdonald summed up how little he cared about any doubters and outside noise.
Now, coming into the season, you were an afterthought to the Rams, to the 49ers. How did it feel to go through both of those teams to earn your trip to the Super Bowl?
We did not care. It's about us. It's always been about us and what we do. And now we're going to the Super Bowl.
This summed up Macdonald better than anything else. Confident, single-minded, and willing to block out any outside noise. It was clearer than ever that Seattle had made a fantastic hire back in January of 2024, and that he was absolutely the man for this job and for this team. All that was left to finish the story was a victory over the Patriots in the Super Bowl, and for the Hawks to get their revenge over the franchise that had stopped them at the 1-yard line back in Super Bowl 49. That night in Santa Clara, the result was never in doubt. Seattle dominated New England from start to finish, bullying Drake May and his offense all game, and coming away with a totally deserved 29-13 victory. This was Mike Macdonald's defense all over, playing with physicality, with intensity, and with complete control, not allowing the Patriots to get anything going on offense. There was no doubt that we were all watching a special unit that night, and one that ranked amongst some of the best defenses we've seen in recent years, including the 2015 Broncos, the 2002 Buccaneers, and of course, the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks. In just 2 seasons as head coach, Mike Macdonald had rejuvenated a flagging franchise and breathed new breath into the entire organization. In just 3 weeks, the team had won as many playoff games as they had in the previous 10 seasons, and Seattle's 38-year-old head coach was the biggest reason why. The doubters had been silenced as the team lifted the Vince Lombardi Trophy at the home of their most hated rivals. Now, these Seahawks are no longer an afterthought. They're the team to beat in the NFL, and a real threat for years to come. But is this defense better than the Legion of Boom? And did Mike Macdonald deserve Coach of the Year? Let us know in the comments.